Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
And today on I Wish You Could Hear This, we are going to do something a little bit different and reflect back on our very first podcast season and look forward to season 2.
That's right. Look forward to season 2.
And that is a crazy, crazy thing to say. We have learned so much in talking to people, and we hope you've learned something too. And we're going to just share some of what we found most helpful out of the conversations we've had, the guests we've had, some of the things we've heard from you as we have gone along. And also then we're going to tease you a little bit. I should say tease you. We're going to tease a little bit of what season 2 is going to be like, because we've already recorded quite a bit of season 2. And oh man, we are going to be diving into a whole new layer of things. That's going to be a lot of fun.
So on what we've learned.
Yeah.
I've been an avid podcast listener for over a decade now. Whenever I go on walks or work out at the gym, I have a podcast on.
He is a podcast guy. Podcasts are his thing.
And since we do events, conferences, I just kind of felt like, you know what, we can do this. And I hear the podcasters, I hear what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it feels doable.
Well, it feels like an important step, given that there are people like you who are less likely to read a book, more likely to listen to a podcast, right?
Yeah,
and there are people who we haven't been to their church to do a marriage conference or whatever it is, and this gives us a chance to share this stuff.
Right, and where I was going with my thought.
Okay, sorry.
was that it looks easy. It sounds easy.
Oh.
And what I found, maybe you found something different, but it's a different game. And it is really challenging. And the podcasters that I love, they know how to draw out a guest.
Yeah.
They know the questions. And there's a lot of preparation that goes into these things.
Yes.
I
didn't appreciate.
No, not at all.
How much work it was going to take for that, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. We're loving this, and we're going to keep this going.
Yeah.
One of the things.
Can I just
Sure.
say we, as an example of just how detailed you have to be about certain things in podcasting world, especially if, like us, you're your own producer, like our staff director, Eileen Kirkland, God bless her. She did not sign up for the job thinking she was going to end up being a podcast producer, but that is basically what she's become. Even to be able to put this the video version of the podcast up on social media with the video, we had to completely redesign sort of the way that our studio was set up. It may not look completely redesigned, but it took hours and hours and hours of, okay, which way do the microphone arms have to go?
And I resisted this quite a bit because creating an audio podcast is technologically not as challenging.
Right.
And it's cheaper. So
and it is cheaper.
This really is something that strikes at the heart of who I am.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I was excited about is that we have a lot of young listeners, young viewers, and which we want to help people who are just getting started in their lives and their marriages, and a lot of those people are more video people.
Right.
And so we really want to do this. Now, it comes along with something fun that we decided to start doing. Anyone who is watching the video is going to have to look over Jeff's right shoulder because they're going to be like, what is that?
So we decided to in each of our videos to insert something
cute,
something meaningful,
yes,
in our lives, or something that we have here in the house,
which we may or may not talk about, because if we have a guest,
correct,
we may not.
correct, correct. Yeah. But when we're on our own, so over my right shoulder is one of my prized possessions that has lived with me on my desk in my office for the past 20 years. It's a 12-inch. It might be 16-inch.
12-inch.
12-inch amazing version of Captain America, fully articulated limbs, and he does all sorts of things. But as a kid, when I was 8 years old, I was introduced to comic books, and Captain America was my guy. I don't know why he wasn't the most popular superhero, but trust me, he's the best. And it's not because he has superpowers that others. He doesn't fly. He doesn't run at super speed. He doesn't have super strength compared to, say, the Hulk. But he has qualities. And those always hit me as being the most important thing for an individual to possess.
To be a good man,
to be
as
a good
they
man.
said in the movie. This is one of the reasons that we're Marvel fans, is because of Captain America.
That's right.
And it's one of the, this is going to sound completely cheesy, but it is one of the reasons we do what we do, because I know that there are many men listening to this who want to be a good man.
Yeah.
They want to be a good, in this case, a good husband, a good father, whatever it is that they're doing to thrive, they want that. And we will have some very exciting podcasts coming up that are going to be speaking directly to men and directly to dads.
And I will point this out, and this is just in Shaunti's, who she is. She had no idea what comic books were as far as the superhero stuff. But because she knew that it mattered to me, it mattered to her. And she chose to invest herself into something that I found joy in. And that's what we, as spouses, can do for one another. You may not be particularly inclined, average Joe out there, to figure skating. But if your wife lights up when she's watching the Olympics every 4 years, the Winter Olympics, sit up there with her. Make sure you're trying to learn and understand and not mock. And that will mean a whole lot to your spouse's heart.
That might be an actual example.
That might be, not the mocking part.
No, the figure skating.
Yes, it was an example. So let's talk a little bit about where we've been.
Yeah, let's look back. I am going to pull up on my Spotify version of our podcast, because it's an easy list, and because our daughter just got Jeff for Father's Day a Spotify subscription.
Because I wasn't going to pay for it myself.
He wasn't going to pay for it himself. And my apologies. I know there's people out there who have different, tastes. This is this is what our daughter ended up buying for him. And so now I can take a look at our podcast on Spotify. And so I'm looking at this whole list, and first of all going, wow, how is it that we have 12 or 13 episodes already? We are hoping at some point to move to weekly. That's a big new discussion. This is something that we would have loved to have done from the beginning, but just it's expensive and we only have so much money for producing. But as we move forward with hopefully finding a meaningful sponsor for the podcast, we might be able to do it weekly. So we will see how that goes. But for now, I'll
give you your
say,
list.
You want me to say which I found most helpful? Well, to be honest, the one that the most emotionally hit me was Dan Deffenbach and the First Responders podcast.
And that's episode 6.
Is that what it was?
It was.
Yeah. You're amazing.
I know.
And this is interesting because in our world, we don't have a ton of relationships with first responders. Your brother was in the military. His son, your nephew,
also in the military.
is still
Right.
in the army. But it's not like our world is populated. We have friendships. We have a few people here and there. We've done a bunch of research with first responders, but it is, I think, out of gratitude to that group of people, that just thinking about the incredible trauma that they are willing to put themselves through on our behalf every day, and that trauma does affect them.
Yeah.
And so to hear from someone who had been through that trauma, had gotten so low that they considered seriously were intending to take their life. and to watch God intervene and turn that pain into purpose, and to redirect that person to now minister to so many other first responders. That to me is one of the most powerful ones that we've heard.
That what this points out, and this is really when we were brainstorming, what did we want a podcast to really convey and communicate? And obviously we want to share information that is meaningful in the hearts and lives of the people who are sacrificing a time in their day to listen to this material. Yeah. So we want that information to be passed along that's helpful. However, what we thought about was how important the power of story is, because we encounter these stories with people all the time. That's what led to the podcast, because when we interview people in our research projects, we're hearing these things, and Shaunti would always go, I wish others could hear this. And so the name of the podcast. But what we see with the power of story is that a story can provide hope. So we've found when we're doing a conference that we can't just communicate information to people. Right. Because information, while helpful, is also material that can easily be forgotten. Yeah. In the day-to-day, busyness of our lives, we can forget those things that we heard that, oh my goodness, I'm never going to forget that. We do. However, a story that communicates that information makes it more settled into our hearts and lives. Yeah. And so that's one thing that we've always learned about the importance of that communication of story to illustrate the information, the research that we found.
To have it basically say, here's how it might play out in practice. Yeah.
And so that's one aspect of it. Yep. Then in the Dan Deffenbaugh podcast, what we have is the power of story, of the supernatural intervention of our God in our lives, because he loves us. Even when our lives are maybe out of control and not even seeking after him, just that amazing grace that our God can break into our lives at times. And those stories, those give us an insight into who he is as our Heavenly Father, but also they give us, again, that hope that allows us to, today's a really tough day, but I remember the story that guy I heard on that podcast told, and that helps me keep going in whatever it is I'm facing today. So that one for me was also really powerful. Yes. Another story, another one go for it. Is episode 4, I think it was, with Gary Thomas. Gary's been a longtime friend. And Gary Thomas, who's written Sacred Marriage, Cherish, many
When
other.
to Walk Away.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we could just go down the list.
He's just an amazing man. And we can say he's not just good with words on paper. He is good in how he lives his life and how he orders his life to be of service to our Father and to people like us who he has served over the years. And so we are so grateful. But in that particular podcast, Gary shared a story. I had been reading some of his blog posts of his father his 95-year-old father was nearing the end of life. And there were a number of things that Gary would share about his dad's life and about how they were engaging in these last months of his life. He was in hospice care. And one of the things that really struck me is that when Gary said, hospice can last anywhere from a week to months and months.
10 months.
And when you're a speaker in the kind of line of business and work that we are in, you make commitments to organizations and to conferences months and sometimes a year or so out that you will be there during this time. And when these life events like the death of a parent comes in, that's all uncertain. Yeah. So Gary, his family, his father, they had all agreed that they wouldn't cause any of their particular scheduled events to be changed, no matter what.
Because there was no way to know.
Because that puts that at at a severe disadvantage, the venues that are bringing
all
in
those organizations,
exactly
yeah.
the disappointment. So he knew his dad was close, and he had just finished a conference in San Antonio, and he was a friend of his after post conference. A pastor friend of his called him on the phone and said, hey Gary, and just trying to talk with him, and said, can I pray with you and for your dad? And while he was on the phone with this pastor, and the pastor was praying for Gary's dad, Gary said, into his heart and mind, he heard the Lord. And he says, I don't oftentimes in my life claim to have heard the Lord clearly. He heard the Lord say, Gary, he's already here. And he thought, well, that's interesting. His pastor friend finished his prayer. They hung up the phone, and immediately Gary's phone rang, and it was his sister. And she said, Dad's gone. Dad's passed. And Gary realized that at that moment that the prayer was being made by that pastor, his father was experiencing the joys of heaven. And our God wanted to confirm to Gary that you can trust me. This is how I'm doing things. And I even let you know these things in advance.
It makes me cry.
It does.
It's just
it's
so
extraordinary.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And that is just one of those little things that helps move us forward in our faith and in our lives. And that's what we hope this podcast will do for all of you who are listening or watching.
So we're going to move in just a second. We're going to move to what we're doing in season 2. But can I share one of my fun feedback items from a listener?
Yep, please.
So Jeff and I are up in our bedroom. I think we were packing for an event, packing to, because we often have to leave super early in the morning. And I think we were packing at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, getting ready to leave the next morning for this event. And my phone rings in, and it's Gary Chapman.
Gary Chapman of
the Five Love Languages.
Gary Chapman?
Yes. I love Gary. He is incredible. He has been an unbelievable encourager of us and our ministry and our research over the years. But I'm always a little in awe of him. And he's probably going to be listening to this. Gary, I'm still a little in awe of you. But so here's what happens. I show Jeff my phone. I'm like, look who's calling. And I answer the phone. I'm like, Gary? And he said, I just want to let you know how much I love your new podcast. And I was like, I cannot believe you were listening to our new podcast. And he said, you did a great job. I think he had just listened to our first one, which is about our story. Yep. And so he was, he said, look, I'm here in a lobby of a hotel, waiting for somebody to pick me up for an event. I just wanted to take a minute and tell you how much I enjoyed it. I'm like, thank you. This is, by the way, for those of you who don't know him, this is the kind of human that he is. He's an incredible encourager. He is the same person behind the scenes as he is on stage. And we are talking about this one church that we are likely to go be speaking at in Illinois either this fall or next year. And the lead pastor, used to actually work with Gary Chapman. And he told me just a couple days ago when we were talking about this, he said, Gary Chapman is the most famous person who doesn't know that he's famous. I'm like, yeah, that's a great description.
Shouldn't we all aspire for that?
And I thought that. I'm like, that is what I aspire to. So first of all, it was incredibly encouraging to hear that from somebody who I respect so much. But then also the thing that just really encouraged me was I was like, so Gary, what are you doing? You said you're in Florida. He's like, yeah, Moody arranged for this, 17 stop tour to go around Florida. And I think I've got those numbers right. It might be something different, but it was something like that, like 17 events. And I said, what on earth? Because Gary is in his 80s.
He's in his 80s.
And he is, you wouldn't know it. And Gary, we wouldn't know it. You run around like you're, 20 or 30 years younger. And he said, look, as long as God gives me the ability, I want to do this. And I thought, I want to be you.
For sure.
When I grow up, because that would be my delight, is to be able to be standing on stage and helping people with their marriages, writing books, sharing on a podcast like this, things that help people thrive, no matter how late in the game it is, as long as God gives us breath.
Amen.
So, yeah. So that was probably, for me, one of my most fun feedback moments.
Yes.
So
I can see that.
Yeah. So okay, moving to the next season, so that we can wrap this up, and you guys get a sense for what we're doing. We've already got recorded multiple episodes that are coming up in the coming months.
And there'll be season 2?
It'll be season 2.
So a season is 12? Is that?
Well, it depends on if we start going to weekly at some point, but it'll be 13 or so. But if it goes weekly, it'll be more than that, because we have the whole second half of the year, which would be awesome. So one of the things that we're going to do is to lean a little further into the, let's just call it the intimacy conversation, because my Midwestern husband is like, I still don't want to say that word out loud. But we looked back at what our most popular podcast episodes were, and they tended to be the ones where it was you and me talking about some of the stuff we've learned in our research.
Yeah.
And talking about intimacy was one of the big ones. And so Dr. Michael Seitzma, we wrote The Secrets of Sex and Marriage together. And so we have a podcast with him coming out that's going to, I hope, be very encouraging and helpful for that particular area of marriage, and thus all of marriage. So that's going to be fun. We have a fantastic, very fun conversation, again, for the younger set and the young marrieds among us, or anyone who has an adult child getting married, with Michelle Lentz, who wrote a great book called Hey Beginner Wife. And she is fantastic. She's in her, I think, probably 60s, I think she said.
Late 50s,
early 60s maybe, and she just has this ministry to young women and men.
Right.
We talked
primarily it's men. I mean women though.
But we added in the conversation with men for the purpose of the podcast, and there's a lot of richness there for those who are starting out early in their marriage. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, please subscribe. In order to get notified when.
And I think as far as on the upcoming ones that I'd really tell people to keep their ear or eye out for, is one that we've done with a pastor from North Texas. His name's Chris Legg. And Chris has written some books on relationships, and he speaks oftentimes at family camps around Texas on, relationships. And just a brilliant guy and a whole lot of fun talking with him.
Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. Well, and give the short version of the story of how we even ended up getting to meet him.
So I serve on a board with a friend from law school, and this friend happened to be Shaunti's roommate.
My roommate.
And she was attending a family camp
from grad school.
She was attending a family camp with her family, and he was the speaker. And she said, he quoted you guys. So I told him, I know you. And anyways, from that event, she connected us, and we have developed a really mutual admiration society for what he's doing, and it's really just a great thing. So you're going to really, really enjoy that.
There's a lot there about marriage, and he has some neat ways of thinking about it.
And he's a trained therapist.
He's a trained
therapist in
addition
to a pastor.
Yeah, but that's one of the times that with a guest, literally there was something that was brought up that, despite all of our research, despite all the years that we've kind of dug into this, it was a brand new concept, something I'd never even thought about before. So very, very innovative thinker and very helpful. But we also, one of the things we wanted to emphasize to you is that we also have a whole new book coming out in September. And so there will be several podcasts in September that are based around the new book, which is Technically, the book itself is for church leaders, church volunteers, pastors, counselors that work with churches, church staff, and just anyone who's very involved in church life, called When Hurting People Come to Church. And, we have a multi-year project ongoing to try to help the church become a key solution to the mental health crisis. And this book is launching that. And it's launching a whole ministry called The Church Cares that we've been working on kind of quietly for the last year and a half. That's been funded by a major donor. My co-author on the book is Dr. Jim Sells, and he is the head of The Church Cares. And we are going to be diving into what I think anyone who is a follower of Christ is going to want to think about and know about when it comes to things we can do to help address so much of the distress that's happening today around the mental health crisis.
So you mentioned Dr. Sells.
Yeah.
So Dr. Sells was
on our podcast already.
Yep. And
it was our most popular podcast, which was on going no contact, and the trend today of young adult children going no contact with their parents. And of course there's a lot of trauma in that on both sides, and he was incredibly helpful because he is a clinical psychologist. It was an incredibly helpful conversation, and this is revealing something that has not been publicly revealed before, and we will leave it here, but we are going to announce now that he has also been an amazing mentor for me as I am finishing up getting my PhD in counseling and psychological studies at Regent University. We will talk about that more in coming days and coming months, because I'm still a few months away from that, about 6 months, five months. But I'm just about finishing the dissertation, and it's
she didn't have enough to do.
Been amazing, yes. But he has been one of my main mentors because he is at Regent. And so part of this launch into the mental health side of things, marriage and mental health is those things go together incredibly importantly. And so this PhD in counseling and psychological studies, which is a very research-oriented, analytical, leadership-oriented degree, hopefully has already helped and will continue to help as we go further into that. So that is our next season ahead, and we are looking forward to sharing it with you. So we hope that you have enjoyed this episode, very unique episode of I Wish You Could Hear This, and we hope that you will subscribe again, and that you will tag us on all your social media channels.
And we'll see you in season 2, or talk to you season 2, something like that.
Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast, and as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.